What is up, guys? This is episode number 10 of the podcast. So I've been testing quite a bit lately, and now this is the actual show. So if we have some hiccups, we'll just work through it and see where we go from there. But if you're new to the show, I am Sean, your host, and I'll be here for a while. So hopefully you'll tune back in, subscribe to the podcast if you have not done so already. But this is going to be a weekly show, and we'll talk about something, just depending on, there'll be different topics along the way. Today, we're going to talk about making a podcast and what it takes to get a podcast going, live streaming and that kind of thing. And so that is a topic of discussion. Now, a couple of things that we'll cover, or I'll go over, just because I want to give an overview of what to expect going forward with this live stream and then the podcast as well. Later on in the show here in just a little bit, I'll talk about the equipment that I'm using, the software, and then I'll give you guys a chance to download a checklist for free just to kind of give you an overview of what is involved in case you're interested in doing something on your own. But the main thing is in today's show is just kind of take you through the process, through the steps, and just kind of, I guess, just give you an idea of what the show is going to be like. Now, some of you that have helped me along the way, that when I was testing and that kind of thing, kind of what to expect. But we're going to answer some questions today. I've got one question that was from previously when I was doing the podcast before, and then I would have people call in. You can still do that, but there was one question that I did not answer while the podcast was just going out to iTunes and Google Play. So I'm going to answer it today. I'll play it on the show here. And then also I have another question coming in through the website, through the form. So now you can actually, submit a form and type out your question. And then, we'll answer it on the show that way as well. So, but the first thing that I want to do going in, just like all the other podcast episodes, is just the current state of the shop. And that project now is a vanity project. I'm not building one from the ground up like Jay and I did. We had to abandon that project. Well, I won't say abandon, but it turned into a different project because of something that I messed up. I gave the wrong measurements. So I don't want to beat a dead horse there because we've talked about that numerous times. But the vanity project that I've got going on now is kind of special in a way because it's the vanity that I'm redoing is my great grandmother's vanity. She's no longer with us, but the vanity is, I'm going to guess, early 1900s, something like that, maybe mid 1900s. I'm not real sure, but it's a really cool piece. My mother had it refinished sometime along the way, so the original finish is not there anymore. So it doesn't really matter that, if I'd change it up or do something different, and I plan on painting it just to kind of get, going with getting my wife a vanity. So that is something that I want to get done. And I want to check real quick, just because it's the first live in a while, I want to check real quick and make sure, I'm going to go to the chat and make sure you guys can hear me. Let me know if you guys can hear me on the show. What's up, Paul? I see your comment there. I want to make sure I'm coming in loud and clear before I continue. So give us just a second here. Gary is tuning in. What's up, Gary? And we'll see if, okay. Yeah, I believe so. All right. Thanks, guys. Good deal. All right. So let's just go back and continue on. So the project that I've got is, like I said, an old project. I'm going to be painting it. I'm going to be using the existing hardware. I'm just going to take it off and I'm not going to do anything to it. It's like a gold twisted metal type of drawer pull. There's like 4 or 6 drawers, 2 or 3 drawers on each side. I think it's just 2 on each side. And so I'm not going to do anything to those. I'm just going to sand it down, paint it, and then kind of, give it a little antique feel. Put the hardware back on it and call it good. But that'll be something that can stay in the family. It means a little bit to my wife and to myself, and so that's kind of cool. The other project that I've got going on, which is a little side project, is the CNC. Now that's going to be, going forward, that's going to be a big part of Stone & Sons, because the CNC is going to be something that I'm going to get my oldest boy involved in. He's interested in technology, like big time. He loves anything to do with electronics. So he helps me out in the shop sometimes, but just like this podcast, he's been on this before, and he wants to continue doing that. And the CNC is going to give him a way to get involved with woodworking. We're going to be doing some signs and stuff, and this is something that I'll talk about later in another project or another episode. But I'm going to start a little sign business, and I'm going to let him handle it. I'm going to kind of coach him along, let him learn how to program, Easel, which is what the X-Carve is going to be using so as far as the software program. So I'm going to teach him how to do that, how to put the wood in there. Of course, I'll be supervising everything, but I want to kind of coach him along and teach him, because he wants to know, he wants to learn. He's excited about the CNC, and so hopefully that'll turn into something good for him. And whether that, I don't know whether that turns into more content or extra content, I don't know yet. But as of right now, the CNC is going to be something that we can do together, and be a learning process for both of us. So if you guys have any projects that you have going on now, throw those in the chat here in just a little bit, and then I'll take a look at those and see what you guys are working on. The upcoming projects that I've got coming up is an outdoor patio furniture. Now, in the previous podcast, I've mentioned several projects that I don't know, just weren't. I delayed the project. So some of the projects that I mentioned that I was gonna start doing or start on, I didn't do those things just for various reasons. So the outdoor patio furniture project will take place. I'm going to be doing a couch with a coffee table. It's going to have a concrete top, and then a couple of chairs. And so just to kind of give an outdoor entertaining type place on our patio. So it should be fun. Let me go to the chat real quick and see if there are anybody talking about what they are working on. So let's see. Okay. So we got a few people that are commenting here. Let's see. Make sure everything's working. I want to make sure this first episode on the live stream is working, because I can edit all this out for the podcast. But as far as the live stream goes, I want to make sure we're trucking right along as far as everything working. But the chat works on the computer and the live stream on my phone. Okay, so 2 for meat, heat in the middle. Okay. All right, good deal. Let's say, okay, I'm going to keep going now, and we'll come back to the chat in just a few minutes. A couple of the smaller projects that I want to complete and actually release videos on, and it may be on my second channel, but small projects as far as putting the CNC together. Like, I don't know what the process is like. I know there have been several people in the past that have told me, several things about the assembly process. So I'm excited about getting into that. I'm not sure what to expect. I'm getting the pieces in little by little. So I've got the wasteboard, I've got the rails, I've got several more things I think is actually on the way. So I'm not real sure when I'll have everything in place. So when I start putting that together, I'll start hopefully putting that out on my second channel. I might even try to, and I don't know how I'll do this, but even set up a second camera to where I can cut away here, and kind of give you an idea of what's going on behind me over here. So that is in the works as well. So I want to mention some of my Patreon supporters. Now, I haven't ever mentioned these guys on the podcast before because I had a different system set up, but my Patreon is going to be geared towards the podcast. I got 7 people here I want to mention that I'm going to treat them as first-time supporters, but they have been here for a little while. So we got D-Ray's Woodshop, Andrew Walker, Christopher Combs, A Glimpse Inside, John Thomas II, Brad Bell, and Brian Collette. Those are the Patreon supporters over on Patreon. And there are ways, I'll throw links down in the description of the YouTube and Twitch and on the show notes if you are interested in supporting the show. Now, the main talking point today is making a podcast. So let me just start off by saying that the reason that I wanted to start the podcast was to give myself another outlet as far as content goes. I want to be able to, I listen to Gary Vee a lot, and so he talks about the video, the audio, the written, and the written is the blog, the video, or the YouTube videos, and the audio, I didn't have anything, so I want to jump, head first and dive into the audio of things, and that's why I started the podcast. And then once I started recording the podcast, and I got 9 episodes in, I felt like there was something missing. I wanted to add a little flair to the show. I wanted to add a little bit of an entertainment aspect of it, get the community involved, because that's really what I want out of this podcast, is just to be centered around community. And so if you are listening to this right now, or you're watching the live stream right now, you're a part of the podcast and the live streams. And so when we get into the chat, you guys can have a chance to ask questions and that kind of thing. I want to take questions from call-ins and submit questions on my website. There's a form there, so you don't have to actually leave a voicemail, but that is available as well, and I encourage both. But getting this whole thing set up was kind of tricky, and to be quite honest, I've taken a little break from YouTube, and I guess you guys have probably noticed that follow me on YouTube. I haven't put out a video in probably about, 3-4 weeks, just from getting everything set up. So in the beginning, initially getting all this going, I didn't want to overload myself, and so just getting it all set up and everything was just a task. So a few things I already had, just talking about equipment. I had the mic here that you see. I had my laptop, which the camera I'm using is the webcam built into the laptop. A few extra things that I bought was the boom arm, which is a really cheap option. I got an external monitor over here. If you see me look over this way, that's what I'm doing. And what that does, having a second monitor, gives me a place to put some of these things that I need to keep an eye on throughout the show, that I can't actually fit on my screen on my laptop, because on the laptop I've got the software that I'm running, and then also my notes to kind of keep me on track of where I'm at in the podcast. So I've got my iTunes pulled up over here, I've got the Instagram pulled up over here, I've got my audio software program pulled up over here on the second monitor, and it just gives me a place to put everything. Now, as far as any other hardware, the green screen behind me, if you look closely, you can probably see on the live stream how I got that green tint around my fingers or around my shoulders. That's just due to lighting. I can figure all that out later. So I can put different images behind me and that kind of thing. But for right now, I'm just going to I've got this wood background. For the listeners, I've got this wood background behind me using a green screen. And that's really, other than a little bit of adapters here and there for my laptop to be able to plug up USB things like my phone or the second monitor, other than that, that's really all that is involved with the hardware. Now, the software, I'm using OBS, which is just an open broadcast system that is free for anybody to use. You build different scenes, you put different sources within those scenes, and you just kind of switch back and forth, kind of like what I've been doing. So I can throw up a different scene here and kind of give you my social handles there. And you can build different scenes that way. And it's a really good place to I guess, take it to the next level as far as on-screen graphics and that kind of stuff. But also, this is where you would program your streaming, your recording. You can go into studio mode, set different settings. It can be automated. It can be really, really advanced and convenient. I try to keep it simple. I don't want too many steps. The more steps you put into a show or software, it's just, that's one more thing that can break and cause headache. So I kind of keep mine simple. I just got my scenes over here where I can see them and click on them as I need them. And then as far as anything else, I've got a couple of automations built in where from the starting soon scene, I can just do an F8 and it goes into my intro, and then after the intro it just flips right into the scene that it's just me talking, introducing myself. So the other software that I've got is called Audio Hijack. I'll put all this stuff down in the show notes, and it'll also be on this checklist that you can download for yourself if you're interested in starting something like this. But the Audio Hijack helps me in a way because I'm using a Mac, and you can't really record your audio because the system, it won't record the system audio unless you have something else to record it. So basically, if I didn't have this software program, I would have all the sound coming out of my laptop and the mic would be picking it up, and that would be causing feedback. So now I've got the I've got my earbuds in, so none of that feedback is happening. You guys are hearing me talk. You heard the intro, all this stuff without any interference. The Audio Hijack is recording everything, and so I can set up different inputs like my blue snowball here, my phone, like if I pull up Instagram, and you'll hear the sounds there. And so the system is going to record that. It recorded it, the Audio Hijack recorded the intro music. It'll record the outro voiceover and those kinds of things. And then there's other things that you can do that are kind of neat too. So for instance, the blue snowball, I've got an air conditioning running in my shop, and you can actually hear it and hear a hissing sound. But I've inserted a dynamics processor little, it's just a part of the software here, and you can adjust the levels to where it clips it. And so at the level where the air conditioner is, you can clip it there, and the rest of it is my voice. So if I'm really, really quiet, nothing is being recorded. And then you will not hear the air conditioner because of what the settings I've got set up. So anyway, it's just, you can get really advanced with all of that, and it's really cool. There's a fee for that, but it really helps me out in a sense, of the show that I want to put out, and because also I'm using a Mac. So the other piece of software that I'm using is QuickTime, and right before this episode I had a little bit of a problem because my phone took a new download. Of all times, it took a download right before I started this live stream, and so when I tried to test it, the sound from the Instagram was not coming through. So I'm going to pull it up here in just a minute, and we're going to find out if it's going to work or not. It was kind of buggy, and I'm thinking it was because of the update, because I did a little test run yesterday for a few minutes and everything worked fine. But QuickTime is the software that I'm using. I've got it, my phone plugged up to my computer. I just open up QuickTime, start a new movie recording, and then that throws up the screen of my iPhone onto OBS, which you guys can take a look at. So that's kind of the gist of everything. And to put it all together, it just took a lot of practicing and programming and that kind of thing. And so when school let out and my kids started coming home for the summer and we got ball going on, there was a lot of interruptions. And so I just said, you know what, I just need to take a break with the videos for a little bit, get this set up, and then I can resume with normal business. And so that's why I've been out of YouTube for a little bit. I had some emails saying, hey, are you okay? And that kind of thing. I'm good. I wanted to get all of this squared away. And I'm going to have hiccups along the way it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to work through it. So another thing too is the internet connection. I may be lagging sometimes, but hopefully it'll be pretty smooth. So that's making a podcast. I don't know if I'm doing it the right way. That's how I'm doing it. As far as the, I guess, getting your podcast out to the world, you can go through like Libsyn and different providers, to be able to upload your podcast recordings, and then it broadcasts out everywhere like iTunes and Google Play and that kind of thing. I'm using Anchor. Anchor is free. It's really easy to set up. You don't have to have any of this. If you've got a smartphone and download the Anchor app, you can do a podcast. It makes it really easy. It's free to use, and they integrate a lot of really cool features. And then you can set up to where you can push it out to SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify now. And so, with the Anchor app and a smartphone, you're good to go if you want a podcast. Live streaming it this way, and then the direction that I'm going to go with the podcast, kind of polishing up the audio version and pushing out to the other platforms, is a little bit more involved, but it's not a big deal. Once you do a couple of them, as far as the editing goes, you can use GarageBand if you have a Mac or any other editing software. So it can be done. If you guys have any questions or anything, shoot me an email, drop me a line on my website at the contact form, and I'll be glad to help you if I can. But hopefully I'll have this checklist in the show notes, and I'll put the link in YouTube and Twitch later. But stoneandsons.net/audio is one way to get to it. And I guess I should touch on the name that some of you guys have seen. Let me throw up the podcast artwork. So if you go to search for Stone & Sons on iTunes or Google Play, this is the artwork you're going to see. For the listeners, this is just going to be a yellow background, my logo, picture of me, and it's going to say a Maker's Podcast on it at the very top. And the reason I wanted to do this is because this is a Stone & Sons audio show, and I may be doing other things. I may have other podcasts, like with my son later on. If we start doing the business with him, he may want to start talking about that and talking it through. That might be part of Stone & Sons audio show, stoneandsons.net/audio, and then have my Maker's Podcast, and then also have whatever that would be. I don't know. I'm just trying to plan for the future a little bit. So this particular podcast is a Maker's Podcast. That's just a generic name, but you can get to the podcast website page either at stoneandsons.net/audio or a makerspodcast.com. And so that's kind of its own separate thing. But that is the artwork for you live streamers. You can see that. If you go to search for it, that is what you're looking for. All right, so one thing that I want to incorporate into the podcast each week is a challenge of the week. Now, a challenge of the week is going to be something that I want to just throw out there. I want to be able to give some things away, and this is where that's going to come in. So, for instance, let's just say, for an example, if we did a challenge of the week this week, and it is to, I don't know, just something very random. Shoot me a tweet or something, and that's not really going to be a challenge. But if that's what it would be, say the first 5 people that tweet me would get whatever I'm giving away. So the challenge of this week, I want to challenge you guys to get out in your shop and make something this week that improves your shop organization. It can be very, very simple. It can be very extreme. You could be working on something right now, but I want to challenge you guys to get out in your shop to make something that's going to improve your shop organization. It could be something very simple. But the first 3 guys or gals that I want you to either tweet me or tag me on a picture on Facebook or something. On Twitter, I'm at Stone and Sons WS, and on Facebook, I'm at Stone and Sons Workshop. But tag me or tweet me with a picture of what you've done, and use the hashtag, and I'll explain in just a second, but use the hashtag AMP Weekly Challenge. AMP Weekly Challenge. That's AMP Weekly Challenge. Now, AMP is a short name for A Maker's Podcast. So AMP Weekly Challenge, use the hashtag there, and just show me a picture of what you're making and what you made. The first 3 people that do that, I'm going to send them one of the tape measure clips that you saw on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, go look me up there. You can see what I'm talking about. It's the latest post that I posted up. It's just a metal clip that you can put on your shop apron or your pocket, and it gives it your tape measure an easy on and off access. Doesn't tear your pocket up. Over time, if you're using a tape measure a lot, you're going to wear out your pocket or your shop apron. These little metal clips save you from that. So it's got my logo on it. It's by Atlas 46. Atlas was generous enough to send me some of those. I'm going to be giving them away randomly at different places, but I want to give the first 3 away here on the podcast. So be sure and tweet me or tag me on Facebook and use the hashtag AMP Weekly Challenge. All right, so something else that we're going to jump into is Community on Air. And Community on Air is a segment that I want to do. I want to take questions from the chat. I want to answer some questions that has been submitted through the Google form. There's a link on my website, and the voicemails that are left. So I've got 2 questions today. One is from the form on my website, and one is from a voicemail that I came in from my previous first 9 episodes that I didn't get to. So let's get into that. The first question is going to be from Andrew Walker. He's one of my patrons, and this came in back around episode 8 or 9. I'm not real sure, but I want to play it for you here, and we're going to see how well this goes. Okay, so here's the question from Andrew. Okay, so Andrew is asking about, and if I got everything, how do I break down plywood? And my method of breaking down plywood has changed a little bit. I used to break down plywood just with a 4-foot level. I would make my marks on the plywood, the 8-foot length. If I was working with a 4 by 8 sheet of plywood, I would make my marks, line the level up, make a cut, and then move it, and then make another cut. Now, if you're cutting in the middle of the plywood, it's very hard to figure out how to get that level in the middle of the plywood and be secure and not move around, because you can't really get a clamp over there. You can actually put a piece of wood across the piece of plywood on top of the level and clamp that down. But what I would do is, especially if I was working on something that had a back or a front that wasn't going to be seen from both sides, I would just screw the level down to the piece of plywood without going all the way through, and then clamp the other end, and it wouldn't go anywhere. And so I would use that method, and I used that for a while. But I made a door board, and that made all the difference in the world. And I made an 8-foot door board, so I could use it on a 8-foot sheet of plywood, or if I was cross-cutting, the 4-foot section. Of course, I would have some of the door board hanging off on each end, which is okay. But that has really, really helped me breaking down sheets of plywood. And then, yes, Andrew, I would take, after I cut it down, I would take it to the table saw, cut it to width there. Or you could turn it around with a door board. It's very simple, and just use a circular saw to keep cutting it down there. So that's my method. That's what I use. The door board really, really comes in handy for me, especially if I can't use my table saw. So thanks, Andrew, for that call. I really appreciate your question. Now, another question came in on the website. Now, this was a form on the website. If you go to amakerspodcast.com, you'll see in the sidebar over there, it says submit a question. Just click on that, take you to a form, and then you can fill in the blanks. And this comes in from Shane from Arizona. He's the Desert Moose Workshop on Instagram. So you guys go check him out. His question is, how does the Atlas vest do with high temps? He lives in Arizona, and he says the weather is warming up for the summer. Actually, the vest that I used, or that I'm using, is the mesh, Journey Mesh chest rig is what they call it. Basically, it's a shop vest, shop apron, whatever you want to say. But it's not that bad. I guess it really depends on what kind of shirt you're wearing under it. But it does have some mesh there, and then the back is all open. It's just straps. But the cool thing is they have the shop vest that I'm using from Atlas. It's got a zipper on one side, and you can put an ice pack in there. If you're working, in really high temp areas, you can put an ice pack in there, and it's got a mesh on the back side of that, so that would keep you really cool. So that might be really handy for somebody that's working in really high temperature areas. But I'm in Mississippi. It gets fairly hot, humid here. So it may get up around 90, 95, 98, sometimes 100. So that little ice pack pocket really would come in handy, but I haven't used it yet and I haven't needed to. And I've used this through the summer last year. So working out so far. So thanks, Shane. I appreciate the question. Now I want to hop over to the chat and see what's going on over there, and see what we. Oh, y'all didn't hear no audio from Andrew. Okay, so let me go back over here and see what is going on. All right, so if I play, didn't hear the question. I got you guys. All right, so I'm going to play it again, and hopefully we're going to play this. I got to figure out where this is at. Okay, so I'm going to grab it here. Give me just a second. I'll edit this out for the podcast. This is what I like about, when you're polishing up the podcast, because you can edit this stuff out. But I'm going to add the question here and see if you guys can hear it. So we're going to name this Q&A. So this is, you're getting a live look at what it's going to take to try to make this stuff work. All right. I'm going to go to my folder, and I'm going to look up my episodes, and I think hopefully I can add in an audio track. And we'll find out if we can or not. So I added it in there.
Hey Sean, this is Andrew Walker down in Texas. I'm really enjoying the show, man. Keep it up. I have a question for you. What's your preferred method for breaking down plywood when you're building cabinets? Most table saws don't have the capacity to cross-cut a cabinet to its full height. I know some people do a rough breakdown with a circular saw, then clean it up at the table saw. But when the cabinet side is longer than your table saw's capacity, what do? I typically use a straight edge and make my crosscut with the circular saw, then use the table saw to rip it to width. But I'm curious to hear your method. Thanks for the great content.
Now we'll see if this works. I'm just going to change screens here. All right, I'm going to go back.
Hey Sean, this is Andrew Walker down in Texas. I'm really enjoying the show, man.
Are you guys hearing that question?
I have a question for you. What's your preferred method for breaking down plywood when you're building cabinets? Most table saws don't have the capacity to cross-cut a cabinet to its full height. I know some people do a rough breakdown with a circular saw, then clean it up at the table saw. But when the cabinet side is longer than your table saw's capacity, what do? I typically use a straight edge and make my crosscut with the circular saw, then use the table saw to rip it to width. But I'm curious to hear your method. Thanks for the great content.
All right, so I know I was talking over the question there just for a second because I wasn't sure if you guys could hear it or not. But what I did, I had iTunes pulled up, and when I go to recording this with a system audio in this audio hijack, it didn't pick it up. But what I did was just grab the MP3, threw it into OBS in the scene selection, and played it there. Now I can't hear it. I've got the monitor turned on, but it wouldn't let me hear it for some reason. Yeah, it's turned up. So was it loud enough, guys? So hopefully that would be, the volume on that was okay. Just checking to see. Yes, okay, just right. What's up, B-Yop? All right, so I'm glad that worked. Thanks for letting me know, because that would have been terrible if I had not checked that and then went to edit the podcast and it was not in there. So anyway, all right, so you heard the question after I answered it. Hope you get the gist there. I'll throw the question in before the answer for the actual audio part of the podcast. So anyway, let's see. I don't know if I can scroll back here, but if you guys have any questions for the chat, throw them in there real quick and we'll take one or two, and then I'm going to move on to something else. So in the meantime, the other ways to throw questions in, I can do Twitter, Instagram. We can do it that way. But I do want to get into Instagram and just kind of take a look at a few projects, what people are posting on Instagram, and just kind of have a conversation about it. And then we'll get into the wrap up here in just a minute. All right, so Donnie says, asking, can I bring a guest in? Bringing a guest with a setup. Yes, I can, Donnie. So if I wanted to, all I got to do is just do in OBS. What I can do is bring in either Google Hangouts or Skype, and then have two people, one here, and then have a conversation back and forth live on, the live stream. And then of course the audio would be recorded over in Audio Hijack, hopefully. So that's how that would work. So it's kind of cool. But I plan on trying to do that. I wanted to try to test that, the Instagram the other day, and it worked. Eventually, if I do some interviews or whatever, that's what I will use. I'll go to Google Hangouts or Skype and bring those people in so you can see them here. Let's see, Robert. Let's see. I'm used to questions and answers being in odd order. Okay. All right. Tom is saying, what am I building? So right now I'm just working on refinishing an old vanity. It was my great grandmother's, keeping it in the family. So it's kind of a special project, but that's something I can work on while I was building this whole podcast live stream setup here. So yeah, it's kind of cool. Brandon White says, if you had to build a wooden lunchbox, would you use pocket holes? I don't know. It just depends on what kind of look you're going for. A wooden lunchbox, the kind you can open and close so you can put a sandwich in it, or are we talking like maybe a toolbox kind of lunchbox deal? See, when you reach for the biscuit joiner, are you as sad as me when there is no gravy to go with it? Yeah, kind of so. Gary Jones is asking, trouble finding dust collection fittings. They all seem to be a bit different. Do you have a suggestion on where to go for fittings? Gary, when I was actually working on my dust collection, and this is something coming up too, I want to revamp my dust collection here in my shop. But I've got a video on YouTube, talks about dust collection, and it's a budget type setup. So I pulled fittings in from Home Depot. I pulled fittings in from Amazon. Peachtree Woodworking, I think it is, had a lot of the hoses that were the better price. Let's see, what was the one place that had, I think it was Wood River, I'm not sure. I have to check and see, Gary, about that. But I pulled fittings in from everywhere, because what I did, I went with the 5-inch snap lock pipe, and it's like a HVAC pipe, and it was 5-inch. My dust collection is 4-inch, and so I had to find a lot of different adapters. And so I just had to, figure out what I needed and just put it together. Well, all that being said, I'm going to go hopefully soon and go with all 6-inch pipe fittings and everything from a Cyclone. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but that's my next step. So good luck with that. send me a message, Gary, on what you're looking for and what specific coupling or fittings you need. Maybe I can help you better. So, all right, Brandon White says, all joking aside, he says, I currently use Irwin Marple's Forstner bits, and I'm not loving them. Do you have any recommendations on a brand to try out that you really like? I use the Porter Cable Forstner bits. I don't use them a ton, so I haven't really had a big deal with them working or not working. So yeah. So Sean, worth the effort, sharpen them. I think they make a jig for actually sharpening Forstner bits, but for the amount that I use Forstner bits, I don't have any issues with the Porter cables that I have. So yeah. All right, I want to jump into Instagram and kind of show you what's going on there and give you an idea of what to expect with that. Now, hopefully, okay, so you're hearing that audio, so it's going to work, I think. All right, so this is Instagram. We got Fix This Build That popped up right away. I think that's what was on the screen earlier. So let's refresh it and see what's going on. So we got Dimension Woodworks. Looks like he is working on a picnic table. I don't think he reposted this. Let's see. He said, throwback to this guy. This is DIY modern picnic table, which is and always have been my most viewed YouTube. If you haven't yet, go check it out. So Dimension Woodworks has got a pretty cool picnic table set up here. I like the border look around the boards. It's really, really cool. Good job, man. Let's see. George Von Driscoll Woodworks working on the table. He's spraying that. I plan on spraying this vanity that I'm working on with one of the Rockler HVLP sprayers for the first time, so I'm excited about that. So George always does good work. If you guys don't follow him on Instagram, you should. Really, really good guy. Let's see what else we got. Jeff Mack always does some really cool stuff. He's working on a door, looks like with a metal frame. That's pretty cool. Yeah, barn door. Alabama Woodworker working on, I think, crib. This guy does some amazing work. I mean, he does a lot of really cool stuff. If you guys aren't following Alabama Woodworker, you really should. He's a fantastic woodworker. So that's a really cool looking crib there. It's a good job, man. Gunflint Designs. He's always got something cool going on. Some good tips. Looks like he's making a blank up for. It's like a really big pen. I'm not sure what this is. A cigar holder. That's cool. Okay, nice. Caleb over at You Can Make This Too. He always is posting his kids in the shop with him, which is cool. I like that a lot. I think whenever we get a chance to invite the kids in the shop in a safe way, I think it's a good idea to get them involved. So anyway, let me see if I can find one that's got a little bit of audio to it to test this audio out. I'm not real sure if we'll find one or not. I think Brad had one that had some. This video has no sound. We'll just keep scrolling here. So this is hashtag wood furniture that I follow, so I don't know who this is. This is ultimate.maker, but you can hear the audio there, so that's kind of cool how that works. Okay, nice. All right, guys, that is Instagram. I can do Twitter the same way, and then also we'll jump into project videos the same way as well. I do want to give a shout out before we wrap up here, and that goes out to Mike Clifford. I met Mike. Now, if you don't know Mike on Instagram, look him up. His handle is Modustrial Maker. His tagline or his description in Instagram is patent attorney by day YouTuber by night, and he does some really, really cool stuff. I'll leave his information down in the show notes so you guys can go check him out. I had a chance to talk with him over at in Atlanta at Workbench Con, and talked to him quite a while about some different things. But he's an interesting guy, super nice guy, and like I said, his Instagram is pretty cool. So go check him out. All right, and so wrapping up the podcast, we're going on about 45 minutes here. That's a pretty long show for a solo show. But just summarizing everything, what it takes to become a podcast and or a live stream. We talked about the equipment and the software. I'm going to have a checklist for you guys to download. So if you're interested in doing something like this, hopefully that will provide some kind of value for you. And like I said, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, visit my contact page on the website, and I'll try to get back to you. I do get quite a bit of, quite a few emails, but hopefully I'll get back to you in a timely manner. Follow me on all the social media. I'll throw that up on the screen for the viewers. If you're listening to this, I'm on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and as well on Patreon. I'll throw all the links down in the show notes so you guys can check me out over there. And really, that's all I've got. Thank you for tuning in for this episode for the live stream. If you want a more seamless episode, be sure to check out the audio version over on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, soon on Spotify, SoundCloud, or whatever else you use. You can find it on most podcast players. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Hey, before you go, make sure to subscribe to the podcast anywhere podcasts are played by searching for Stone & Sons. Also, to get notifications when I go live, follow me on Twitch and subscribe to me on YouTube. You can find all of the links below or in the description, including the show notes from today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. See ya.